There we go. Okay. We should have sound. Do we have sound now? If anybody could check in. If anybody in the check can we confirm if we got sound. We should have sound now. My microphone was messed up. Awesome. All right, we got sound now. Sweet. I'll just start this over. Welcome everybody to another episode of Iowa State Cyclones live here on the Voice of College Football Network. I'm your host Levi Stevenson, also the managing editor over at Wide Right and Natty Light, the SB Nation site for Iowa State. Happy to be back here. We're on Wednesday this week because I had something going on. I had something going on yesterday, so I wasn't able to do a show. But we will be here for the next couple Tuesdays as well. So on the 5th and the 12th, we will be here at normal time, 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. Central. I'm in Central time, so I'm not sure why I said Eastern first, but 7 o'clock Central, 8 p.m. Eastern on the normal Tuesday time slot. Then I will be in Ireland for the following two Tuesdays. So the 19th and the 26th, I will be in Ireland for both of those Tuesdays. I will try to either have something pre-recorded for that week, just like a game preview for those weeks, or I will do something. Maybe I'll find a time to go live in Ireland or something like that. Maybe it'd probably be it might be middle of the day instead of at the usual time slot, because the usual time slot would be at about what do we got here, about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning in Dublin. So probably not going to go live at 1 o'clock in the morning from Dublin unless I'm at a bar or something like that and we just feel like having some fun. But I will have something for you on those Tuesdays, I believe, but we'll just have to see how it goes. But I will be in Dublin for those 2 Tuesdays, but then we'll be back for a fully normal show on, I guess it'd be all the way at September 2nd would be the next normal show after that. But this week we are talking about the needs, the wants, and the wishes for Iowa State football for this 2025 season. We're now into camp. We are in the first kind of full week of training camp. We've seen clips come out from the Cyclone football Twitter account, and it's camp highlights. So you're going to get like some, you're going to have some of those where it's just like, everything looks positive and awesome because obviously that's all they're going to put out. But the things we've seen so far, the clips they've put out have been encouraging. We've seen Chase Soule make a few nice plays. Seen some stuff from Carson Hansen. Saw some plays from like River Peppers and things like that. So, they've got some nice things there just to let us know that things are going well. Anyways, I have not heard of any major injuries, so that's good. And we will be talking about that here in a little bit as far as the main chunk of the episode. But as always, as we get going through this whole episode, this is meant to be a Q&A. So if anybody's got any questions they want to ask, absolutely, I'm more than happy to stop what we're doing and ask and answer questions. Potentially do a call-in thing. If anybody in the chat wants to call in, I'll put the link in the comments for you guys, or in the live chat for you guys, so you guys can follow that if you like. But I'll only do that if I've got like interest from a few people. But Q&A, absolutely. If you guys got questions or comments that you want to talk about a little bit as we get going on this, I am more than happy to do those. Before we get going, one last little bit of housekeeping. We did finally get the word on Evan Jacobson, the tight end out of Waukee. He committed to Texas A&M, so he will not be a Cyclone. We wish the best of luck to him. I wish more luck to him if he was at Iowa State. That's what it is. You would have liked to land one of those high-end tight ends in this class, but unfortunately, Iowa State completely whiffed on all of those high 3, low 4-star tight ends that they were targeting for the 2026 class. So they'll find a guy, they'll find a sleeper in the senior class like they always do. But then now you immediately need to focus your attention on the 2027 target, Luke Brewer from Waukee. He's got every blue blood offer under the sun, but he's local, plays tight end, all that. You think he'd have a shot at it. We'll see. But let's start with the things that we really, really need to see from if Iowa State is going to accomplish its goals for the 2020-25 football season, these are the things that absolutely need to happen. First up, pass rush. There has to be a pass rush. The pass rush at Iowa State has been inconsistent, I would say, at best, bad at worst, since Will McDonald left after the 2022 football season. Will McDonald, so he's going into his third year in the NFL right now, which seems kind of crazy, but yeah, this will be Will McDonald's third year in the NFL. Since he left, the pass rush has been, like I said, been sketchy, been inconsistent. They really need to find a thing there. Do you have a Will McDonald in the room? Probably not. You don't I don't know that there's anybody in the room right now that has the athleticism and the motor required to be Will McDonald. There's a few guys that I think have the size there. We talked about him a little bit last week in our position battles discussion. With Ikeni Ezeogu and maybe Cannon Butler, maybe it's Tongamoa, not Tongamoa, Camilo Tongamoa. There's a name for you. Haven't heard that one in a minute. But I did actually, I'm going to do a little bit of cross promotion here. I did do a nice article last week. Nice article. I wrote it. I did do an article last week though, talking about the position battles in camp, which was kind of a sort of a supplement to the discussion we had last week. It's on widerightnattylight.com. You can go there. It's, the different position battles. So I kind of expounded a little bit more detail about all of these. But at defensive end, Ikeni Ezeogu, Miles Mendezoon, Vontre Malone, Tamatoa McDonough. That's who I was thinking of. Tamatoa. Cannon Butler. Somebody's got to step up. There's some size and athleticism there. I think Ikeni Ezeogu is the guy that has the best shot at it. But you got to see more from him, though. You can see all the athleticism and the size and strength in the world, but what you need to do to be able to turn that kind of a player into a high-end pass rusher in the Big 12 is motor. They have to be able to keep getting after it over and over and over again. They need to be able to shed blocks, have a good pass rush set. A guy like him, like Ikenna, who is 6'5", 285, he should not be a run stopper. He needs to be a guy on the outside that has to decide to play with a high motor and to be that kind of guy, to be that kind of pass rusher. If he does that, he has the potential to be a very good pass rusher. The athleticism and the basic raw ability, the talent is there. He needs to step up. Frankly, that's just Ikeni Ezeogu needs to have a big season here. It can be it can be one of the other guys, Tamatoa McDonough. It can be Cannon Butler. It can be Vontre Malone. It can be any of these guys. But I think Ikeni Ezeogu, who's been in the program, he's a redshirt junior. He's been in the program for 4 years now. He needs to make that jump. He needs to decide to fulfill his potential and to get there. He's got all the ability in the world there. He's not that much different size-wise than David Irving was at Iowa State. And famously, David Irving was a tremendously low motor player. But when David Irving decided that he wanted to play to the best of his ability, he was the best defensive football player on the field most of the time. There's a reason he got a shot in the NFL while having little to no production in college in terms of sacks and things like that. It's because when he decided to be the player that he could be, he was absolutely a disruptive player in the middle of any defensive line. That did not pan out for him because he made his own choices. Ikeni Ezeogu has that type of athleticism and ability to be that type of player. He needs to decide to be that kind of player. And if he does that and can become an effective pass rusher on his own, that opens up so many avenues for Coach Rashid, for Coach Haycock, and the rest of that defense to get a lot more creative in how they can get to the quarterback and be more aggressive on defense rather than just having to sit back and play coverage for 10 seconds. You know, this group needs this group, I think, almost more than any other on the team will have a deciding factor in how far Iowa State goes. Is the rest of the defense good enough to win games without an elite pass rush? Probably. The secondary is going to be probably the best one in the Big 12 again. The linebackers will be very good. But if Iowa State wants to win a Big 12 title and make it to the playoff, and not just make it, but maybe win a game in the playoff, a pass rush, a serviceable pass rush, doesn't have to be elite, a serviceable pass rush absolutely has to be there for if Iowa State wants to achieve the very tippy top end of its goals. The team is good enough to win 8 or 9 games with a bad pass rush like it did last year. It can do it. If you want to be able to get back to 10 wins, you want to, more, you want to, 10 regular season wins. Obviously, they skipped right over that, went to 11 last year. But if you want to be able to get back to 10 wins in the regular season, you want to get back to the Big 12 title game, you want to win the Big 12 title game, pass rush has to be there. Has to be. The next need for Iowa State is another receiver. I know we talked about this last week in our position battles, but this is really a crucial thing. Now, I do want to clarify here that another receiver doesn't necessarily mean another wide receiver. This could, it's really what it needs. Another pass catcher is what it needs. There's plenty of talent in the tight end room that like Ben Bramer can be your third receiver, but ideally you can find another guy out of the receiver room to be this. So that way Ben Bramer, if your third receiver can be the defense's fourth priority as far as dealing with it, but your third receiver can be dangerous. That's huge. I mean, that makes, if Iowa State can find, if Chase Soul and Xavier Townsend pan out to be as good as we think they're going to be, as good as we think they can be, I think Chase Soul is about as close to I don't want to use the word guarantee, but he feels like the most solid, like there's little chance that he doesn't pan out type of player to me. I feel like just his ability, his size, his athleticism, all that combined in the way Iowa State, how good Iowa State is at using different, especially big bodied receivers. To me, I think the odds of him panning out are over 90%. Like to me, there's almost no shot he doesn't work out. Xavier Townsend, I think, is similarly up there. Smaller guys are not as physically dominating, so they have to do a little bit more to really stand out. But if they just tell Xavier to do exactly what Jalen Knoll did last year and just be that guy, he'll be fine. So assuming those two guys pan out, that third receiver there has to, like, if you can find a third wide receiver that pans out, that can be a good, reliable target, especially on third downs and stuff like that. You're going to be looking at the tight ends at Chase Soul, those guys for third downs a lot. But if you can find guys that can contribute here, this makes your offense nearly undefendable at this point. If Chase Soul and Townsend are great, we know Ben Bramer when he's healthy is great. We know Gabe Burkle was very good last year. We know he can be very, very good. We know Carson Hansen and Abu Sama have a very high ceiling. Carson Hansen is a very high floor guy. Abu Sama is a very high ceiling guy. And we will probably be talking about Abu Sama here in a little while. But if you can be at a point where the defense they have to identify all 5 eligible pass catchers on every play, and they have to really give attention to that many guys across the board. It's difficult enough for them. It was difficult enough for them last year to stop 2.5 guys. Jalen Jaden ate most of the targets at receiver, and then you had a tight end. Early it was Bramer. When he was hurt, it was Gabe Burkle. But it was still kind of a half measure at tight end. Last year the tight ends weren't as involved maybe as they could have been. because Higgins and Knoll were so good, and you had the injuries to Ben Bramer and things like that. But on the field at any one point in time, you're going to have Chase Solo, you're going to have Xavier Townsend, you're going to have Ben Bramer. You might also have Gabe Burkle. You'll have a running back in the backfield that absolutely is capable of being dangerous in the passing game. That's a lot. That's a lot for the defense to have to deal with, on top of Rocco himself being a running threat and then being a generally pretty accurate quarterback, especially one that throws a really nice deep ball. That's a lot to deal with. Again, Iowa State has proven that it can win games with one or two good receivers and another tight end and a decent running game. They've done it in the past. Xavier Hutchinson, especially in his last couple seasons, just ate every target you could throw at him, basically, and they won games. Then you have Jaden and Jalen. You have two guys, and they focused around that, with not a lot of involvement from the tight end, and they won a bunch of games. But again, if Iowa State wants to achieve its top end goals, winning a Big 12 title game, getting to the playoff, you need to find another pass catcher. Specifically, I'd like to find another receiver to have them dedicate. That way, they have to dedicate a nickel corner or a safety to dealing with this other receiver that they know is dangerous. And they can't put something like that on a tight end, and they have to put like a linebacker on a tight end, which a linebacker guarding Ben Bramer is going to go very poorly for them. So I think for your ceiling, to hit your ceiling, you got to find another guy. And that could be a number of guys. It doesn't have to be one guy either. It can be a combination of few days, and it probably will be. It will be a platoon that fills that role. Eli Green, Daniel Jackson, Brett Eskelson, and maybe it's Dominic Overby or Zay Robinson, which I talked about him quite a bit last week. It could be it could be one of those guys. It could be three of them. But as long as Iowa State has a third receiver and is a threat to hit the third receiver on any given play, that creates a lot of matchup issues on top of the matchup issues that they're already going to create by running, out of 12 personnel fairly frequently, where they have to keep a heavy box, and then Sol and Townsend can do their thing on the outside or whatever it is. Or you get Ben Bramer on the seam up the middle, whatever it is. The offense is in a spot right now where they can already create a lot of problems. Another receiver makes it nigh undefendable. The other need, and I think this is probably the most significant need that is on this entire board, and you may or may not be surprised to hear this, but it's staying healthy. No doubt. Iowa State has to stay healthy. Yeah, Jaybird chiming in. Gabe can definitely be a third receiver. No doubt. But Gabe Burkle can absolutely, they can run 12 personnel. And Gabe Burkle, if the defense is locked in on Sol Townsend and Ben Bramer, and Gabe is able to run free off of a tight end or something like that, that's a great win. And that's why, I want to clarify that it's really more of finding another pass catcher. Because I don't want to include Ben Bramer as the third pass catcher, because he is his own deal at tight end, where a defense can effectively deal with three receivers. Beyond that, it gets tricky, because you're really spreading resources thin at that point. At a certain point, you're asking them to play man and things like that. It can get difficult beyond that. You can deal with three receivers. A fourth gets pretty tough. So not including Ben Bramer in this, getting Gabe Burkle involved, maybe as a third receiver, whatever it is, will help this whole thing be much easier. Tyler's right here as well. Spread the ball around, not just focus on two receivers. That's exactly right. They're not going to just dump 100 targets apiece into Jaden and Jalen, into Chase Sol and Xavier Townsend willy-nilly like they did with Jaden and Jalen last year. They're going to spread the ball around. They're going to get those tight ends involved. It's Ben Bramer and Gabe Burkle. Behind them, they've got Cooper Alexander, who is, we believe is going to be really good. Keaton Roskop is another one in there. Behind him, that could be something. Tyler Moore will be the F-back. He can be kind of the Kyle Juszczyk out of the backfield, angle route kind of guy. There's a lot of fun things you can do with that tight end group that are going to create a lot of problems for a lot of teams. But getting that extra reliable third or fourth pass catcher is going to be huge. But staying healthy, I think, is by far the biggest thing. When you look back at last season, being able to do what Iowa State did with all of the injuries that they had to deal with, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but even on the offensive side of the ball as well, with tight ends on the offensive, in the offensive line. The fact that they were able to do what they were able to do is pretty unbelievable. Is pretty remarkable. Now they won a lot of close games, which Campbell has gotten a bad rap in the past before of them losing close games, but they won tons of close games last year. They were fundamentally sound in a lot of ways. There were other ways where, early in the game, first couple quarters, it's a little rough, and then they pick it up in the third and fourth quarter. I would say it was one of the best second half football teams, the entire country last year. And when you got, fourth quarter game winning drive, Rocco Becht is the best quarterback in college football. But the health of this team was such a big thing. It was such a big storyline last year, and it affected. I mean, it wasn't just that you were running out, third and fourth string guys at linebacker. It was you're running out. I mean, you're starting middle linebacker halfway through the season because of injuries. Your starting middle linebacker was a walk-on true freshman in Rylan Barnes because Caleb Brazina, your other true freshman, was hurt. He'd already been hurt. So you're at one point, I think it's Kansas, you're starting a redshirt sophomore Cooper Ebel, who have now found out that he was also playing hurt. He just didn't miss a lot of games last year, but he was also playing hurt last year. And then you are playing with walk-on true freshman Rylan Barnes, who for what he was, for the situation he was put into, played very well. I think Rylan Barnes deserves a freaking gold medal for what he did last year. I'm sure he was probably not expecting to see the field outside of maybe some special teams here and there. And he's starting Big 12 games in November. And then towards the end of the season, before Will McLaughlin came back, you've got Bo Goodwin, who's a true freshman, playing there at I think he was on the Sam. I think it was in the Sam linebacker. Or was he on the Will? I don't remember. He was playing as an outside linebacker as a true freshman. I would say he was playing two true freshmen and a redshirt sophomore, the grizzled veteran of the bunch. By the time, by mid-October, there was nobody left there to play. So when you have such young guys there, not only do they get tired because there's just physically not enough people to go around to keep people healthy, but because even like Jack Sadowski got hurt, Jacob Ellis got hurt, John Klosterman, your depth pieces got hurt. When you have that, the secondary has to compensate for that, which means that you have to come up and play a little bit tighter to the line of scrimmage to help cover up some deficiencies of where guys are. So it can leave you vulnerable to more deep passes, which we saw against Kansas, where they the complete and total lack of pass rush that game because J.R. Singleton and Dominique Orange were both out for that game, on top of your linebackers being out. I would say it was basically playing a third string defense against Kansas down in Kansas City, which is rough. Obviously, so you have no pass rush. You have a bunch of linebackers that don't know what they're doing. So you can't get to the quarterback. Your secondary, which was the best secondary in college in Big 12 in the Big 12 last year, and one of the better ones in college football last year. They have to play out of position, and gave up a few more bad plays and whatever else just to make the whole thing work. Then by the end of the season, obviously it's just trying to win shootouts because the defense just can't really stop anybody. And oh, by the way, they were also hurt. Malik Verdon missed a bunch of games last year and didn't even play in the Big 12. Or he played in the Big 12 title game, but he had this massive RoboCop metal arm on his, I think it was on his left arm, that he was a bionic man at that point. Bo Freeler was told to medically redshirt before that, or to medically retire before that season because his shoulders were so messed up. So you've got a safety that shouldn't even be playing football because his shoulders are so blown out. You've got another safety that has had injury problems kind of his whole career and was playing with basically no arms the last thing. And poor Jeremiah Cooper's back there trying to do everything and getting caught out of position you know, eventually in the Big 12 title game, Malik Verdon has to come out and Tayshaun James comes in and struggles a little bit. It's much better than he was against Kansas, but struggles a touch, just having to get caught up with everything that's going on. And staying healthy will fix so many of these problems. You stay healthy, your pass rush can be a little bit more effective. Your linebackers, you can rotate them around, you can do funky things with them. Caleb Bacon should be healthy. He is healthy now. He'll have to get back up to speed because he missed all of last year. Assuming Caleb Bacon stays healthy, he might be your best pass rusher. But if you lose linebacker depth again, or you lose, God forbid you lose like a secondary player like Jontez or Jeremiah Cooper or somebody, like, God forbid you lose one of those guys, staying healthy will fix a lot of the defensive inefficiencies we saw towards the end of last year. Because I don't know if I've ever seen a football team as snake bitten by injuries as the Iowa State defense was last year. It was pretty unbelievable. But on the offensive side of the ball, Ben Bramer's the big one, who was not able to stay healthy at all last year. You get him healthy now. If he can remain healthy, and Gabe Burkle can remain healthy, and the offensive line can remain healthy, you know, because you lost Dylan Barrett for a few games last season. You keep those guys healthy, and you're not going to be able to keep everybody healthy every single week. That's just not how football works. If Ben Bramer can stay healthy, that adds a completely different dimension to the offense where because it's I know I keep, like, without really doing a deep dive on the film here to show you what happens when Ben Bramer's on the field. It's hard to, all I can do is tell you about it, but he has a different kind of gravity to him as a football player than we've seen in a while. What I mean by gravity here is when Ben Bramer's on the field, you basically have your best hope to cover him is to find your biggest safety and tell him to guard Ben Bramer one-on-one. You're asking your biggest safety. If you've got a safety that's 6'2", 6'3", that's your best shot at dealing with Ben Bramer, because his athleticism, he's much too quick, and much too fast, especially in straight line speed, for a linebacker to reliably keep up with him in, like, on a seam route or something like that. They're just not going to be able to deal with him. He's also 6'7", so the linebacker that already can't keep up with him, IME says, "Go Hawkeyes," and I say, "Fuck you." On seam routes, you can just kind of throw it up to Ben Bramer, and he just kind of comes down with it. He's a good third down target. He forces the defense to essentially compress into the middle of the field a little bit. You know, you basically have to cover him short with a linebacker, and then the linebacker has to release him to a safety behind that can then keep up with him. You know, a safety can probably keep up with him on a deep route, like down the seam or a corner route or something like that, but they're not going to be physical enough to box him out. A linebacker is going to be strong enough to box him out, maybe, but he's not going to be tall enough to do it. So you already have a physical matchup problem, like you did with Charlie Kohler, who was not necessarily the most fleet of foot. He's a good route runner, fairly athletic, but Charlie Kohler made his hay on being able to run really, really good routes. His routes were excellent. And two, being able to really box defenders out and just keep them out of the play, essentially, to where really only Charlie can come up with the ball that you're throwing to him. Ben Bramer has that size and the ability to box guys out, but he also has the athleticism to stretch the field. So when he's healthy and you're a defensive coordinator trying to figure out how to cover him, you're covering him underneath the first 5 to 10 yards of the linebacker and passing him off to a safety and hoping that the safety is paying attention, or that Iowa State has not schemed somebody else into that same area to make the safety deal with it. At their best last year, when we saw, Ben Bramer got, in the Iowa game, we saw it. The safeties have to come up to deal with Ben Bramer, and then you run a backside post with Jalen Knoll, who then beats Xavier Nwampa, makes his cut, just torches Xavier Nwampa downfield, and he's home free for a touchdown. Part of that is created by the gravity that Ben Bramer has around him when you're talking about scheming around him defensively. He opens up a massive part of this offense that will make Chase Soul and Xavier Townsend's lives much easier. Much easier. He makes everybody's life easier in the passing game when he's healthy, and the defense has to account for him by essentially committing two different players, committing a player at each level of the defense to dealing with him, because one of those is not going to be able to deal with him in a different part of the field. So Ben Bramer staying healthy changes the outlook for the offense as far as its explosiveness and things like that. The defense, it's got to be the linebackers and defensive line have to stay healthy. Okay. We've got the needs out of the way. What do we want? What do we want? These are things that are not absolutely necessary for Iowa State to achieve its biggest goals, but they will reduce the pressure on you coming through on your needs or on your other wants. Coming through on a want makes life a lot easier and helps everything else work. First one up is Jeremiah Cooper returning to all Big 12 form. Jeremiah Cooper was a freshman All-American by a few different outlets, and then his sophomore year he was also very good. He was a a first team All Big 12 player. I think he may have been like a third team All-American or something like that, but established himself as one of the best safeties in the conference. Last year was not as good. He was fine, but he was not the Jeremiah Cooper we were used to seeing. And I think at least part of that is the injuries. I firmly believe that he was asked to keep his eyes basically in two different places. Paying attention to the linebackers to make sure that if they blow an assignment, that he's there to deal with it, but also just trying to deal with what he's supposed to be able to, what he's supposed to be dealing with his responsibilities. With everybody healthy and with two healthy safeties next to him, and you got Bo Freeler back there, who was always where he needed to be, but again, playing through injuries. Malik Verdon playing through injuries. I think with health and experience around him, Jeremiah Cooper can absolutely go back to being who he was his freshman and sophomore year. Partially because he's going to be asked to be that, because he is now the leader of that room. Bo Freeler is not there anymore. Bo was the guy that cleaned up a lot of things. He cleaned up a lot of mistakes. He was just the guy that he was just the super dependable guy that you could have back there, doing what you needed him to do. Jeremiah Cooper has to be the leader in that room now. He has to be the guy. And that's not because, Jameson Patton or Tayshaun James can't play. I mean, they're good players. But Jeremiah Cooper has to be the veteran leader in that group. He's been here. He's already played 3 full seasons. He's going into his senior year here. He needs to be the fourth-year senior that group needs. He needs to go back to being the Jeremiah Cooper we know he can be, which at his best is sort of Iowa State's version of Tyrann Mathieu when he was at LSU, where he's just out there causing chaos. He's doing stuff. He's ball hawking at the back end of the defense and he's undercutting, crossing routes to pick off passes, and he's, in deep coverage coming over as kind of a robber from the other side of the field. That kind of stuff is where Jeremiah Cooper can return to and again be an all Big 12 All-American type safety for Iowa State. That makes pass cover that seals up the back end of your pass coverage and really cements that group as the best in the Big 12. Next up, you may be surprised to be seeing this in the want section versus the need section, but offensive line consistency. The reason this is a want and not necessarily a need is kind of two reasons. One is that the offensive line really hasn't been consistent for the entire Campbell era, and they've won lots of games. They have shown an ability to be able to work around an inconsistent offensive line. But if you have good, consistent offensive line play, which I think Iowa State should be the expectation this year should be a consistent offensive line play. You've got veteran players across the board. You've got James Neal, left tackle, who's played a bunch of snaps and would have been the starting left tackle last year if not for Jalen Travis. You've got Dylan Barrett coming back, who was very good last year, has been in the program now for a couple years. You've got Brennan Black moving inside to center. This is his third year in the program where you expect him to really take a step forward. At right guard, it should be either Trevor Burr or Jim Boniface. I think maybe Trevor Burr might be the leader there, but who knows? Both of them have played a bunch of snaps for Iowa State in at the respective points in their career. And then right tackle is Tyler Miller, who has been at Iowa State for 200 years. You have you have a very veteran group. You've got everything is pointing towards this being the most consistent offensive line of the Campbell era. And frankly, the group with the highest ceiling. Does that mean they will be the best offensive line of the Campbell era? I don't know. The 2020 group was great, but 2020 is a weird season. Were they actually great, or were they taking advantage of COVID teams? Who knows? This position group has been at times a thorn in the side of the program. The personnel is in place. I believe Ryan Clanton has his dudes in there that he wants. And, this is his third year at the helm of the offensive line. We should really be seeing the fruits of the recruiting and the coaching philosophy that he imparts on these guys. We should really start seeing some of the fruits of it, really start seeing it this season. And especially when you look at a guy like Brennan Black, who showed a lot of promise early on, just raw. Plays with a great motor, but he's raw. We should be seeing the fruits of Ryan Clanton this season. I want them to be consistent because that makes, if you get good, consistent play out of the offensive line, your running game is better. When the running game is better, the passing game is better. When the passing game is better, the running game is better. And you're putting up points and you're not putting as much pressure on the defense, and that makes everything better. But if the offensive line is once again like overall fine, but very up and down, like some games are really good and some games they just struggle a little bit, I would say it has essentially been scheming their offense around that level of play for the last 5 years. Basically, they can win games with an okay offensive line. A good offensive line that is consistently good takes this to a whole nother thing, where at that point, if Iowa State's getting like really good offensive line play and able to start running the ball really well, I in my mind, again, this is biased, I believe Iowa State becomes one of, if not the favorite to win the conference at that point, because I genuinely don't know what you do to stop the Iowa State offense if the running game's clicking and Ben Bramer's healthy. I have no idea what you do to stop the offense at that point. Next up in my list here, I need to see Rocco Becht cut down on his turnovers. Now, Rocco, in general, is not, we saw in his freshman year, he is not like naturally inclined to be turnover prone. I should say his redshirt freshman year, his first year starting. He is not, we look at here, his first year starting here in 2023, 231 or 367 attempts, he went 23-8, touchdowns and interceptions. He only threw 9 last year, but he also, he didn't, his interceptions per attempt were down. But there was a lot of times where last year where he kind of got away with a few of them. And the turnover worthy plays, I think, were a problem. All gas, no breakfast, chiming in. I should be outside mowing my lawn, but here I am, hungry for college football talk. Hell yeah, bud. Should be noted that breakfast is the best meal of the day. Breakfast food is the best type of food. In fact, I love breakfast so much that when I got married a year and a half ago, a little over a year ago, year and a couple months, our catering at our wedding was breakfast food. I love breakfast. All gas, no breakfast. Hell yeah. Except for I want breakfast. I want a lot of breakfast. Anyways, Rocco, we can see he isn't necessarily like a turnover prone quarterback. That's not like, it's not in his nature to be turnover prone. But last year we saw a lot of turnover worthy plays, and specifically we saw last year an unfortunate propensity for throwing pick sixes, not just interceptions, like, throwing a bomb 40 yards downfield and it gets picked. It's, I'm throwing a 6-yard out route and the corner jumped it and took it to the house. We saw too many of those last year. Part of this is scheme. And I think Taylor Mauser, all in all, did a fantastic job last year for this first season as offensive coordinator. Part of this, there is a scheme thing that you can do to help Rocco here, which is not throwing 5-yard out routes to the wide side of the field. That is a long, difficult throw that gets you not a lot of gain. But if a defender is sitting on it, they can jump it and it will go to the house every time. It's a high risk, low reward throw that I don't love unless you have a truly like exceptional matchup. And Rocco can deliver a very good ball to the outside, to the wide side of the field. We need to we need to not be scheming towards that. If you're running out routes, do it to the near side where it's a much easier throw. But in the end, they're going to call that like that will be called at some point this season. They're going to run, out routes to the wide side of the field. Rocco needs to make better throws, and he needs to not be staring down his receivers on those types of things. Cause that's the read. That's where he's throwing it. But when you just sit on it and stare at it and also sort of underthrow your receiver a little bit, that is how you get those picked off. That needs to not happen. But you go into this year, even if he's still around that 7 to 8 interception range, you're not like, it's not catastrophic. If you can turn those pick sixes into 0 pick sixes, if it was 9 picks last year and no pick sixes, and the other ones that were like close calls didn't also get picked, you're fine with that. Like, it's not a big deal. 25-9 is not it's not like it's not setting the world on fire in terms of your touchdown interception ratio, but it's fine. You're happy with that. The 59.4 completion percentage, I do not love that. That needs to come up. That number needs to be in 65 or higher range. I'd like it to be closer to 70. If you can get over 70, great. But 70% is harder than you think in college football, unless you're running some very specific, unless you're running a very specific, like Mike Leach style air raid where it's lots of dinking and dunking. Unless it's that, where it's designed to have a very high completion percentage because your passing game, your short passing game is your running game. Unless it's that, 70% is a pretty high number. If Rocco can be over 65%, doesn't throw any pick sixes, and can still stay in that 25 to 30 touchdowns and under 10 picks, you're fine with that. But if he cuts that down to 4 picks or something like that, goes 25-4, that changes a lot of football games, right? That takes a lot of 1-possession games into 2-possession games pretty quick. And then you're starting to win games more comfortably, and you're just starting to win more games in general. So I need Rocco to clean it up a little bit. Again, I said this earlier. Fourth quarter Rocco, when the game's on the line and you need a drive down the field, Rocco immediately becomes the best quarterback in college football. Just is. If you could get fourth quarter game on the line Rocco for 4 quarters, he is a Heisman candidate. He is. He just is. He's that good. When he is on and he's hot, Rocco is as good as any quarterback in college football. He just is. The problem is that the first 2.5 quarters are inconsistent, and he can be turnover. He can throw some turnovers in the first half, and maybe make a couple bad throws, whatever it is. If you can get fourth quarter Rocco Becht for 4 quarters, I would say it's winning the Big 12. But we got to see that. We need to see that. So it's not only Rocco Becht reducing turnovers, but it's consistency out of Rocco Becht, and it's avoiding the really it's avoiding the lowest lows. Highs are great, but you need to go high back down to neutral, not high, low, or start low and then dip up. You don't need the fourth quarter heroics if you're not throwing picks and pick sixes in the first half. You don't need the game-winning drivers UCF if you don't throw 2 pick sixes earlier in the game. So it's that kind of thing where Rocco needs to stop making it more difficult for himself. Next up. Oh, I think I'm back. All right. So I'm not entirely sure what happened. But we're back. So anyways, this is that's my Twitter. Ignore that. That's not my Twitter. It's the wide right Twitter. Anyways, so don't worry, breakfast. I've got you here. You don't have to go out on the lawn. It's also dark or almost dark. Anyways, Rocco Becht being more consistent will make things much easier for Iowa State. So like I said, it's not just the turnovers, it's being more consistent and avoiding the lows, the big highs and the big lows, keeping it more even keel. And being fourth quarter Rocco for 4 quarters and avoiding, having to make the game-winning drive every single game. Even though he got hit, Rocco in the clutch was unbelievable. Next up, we've got one more want, and that is to find a solid starting corner opposite of Jontez Williams. Now, I do believe that Iowa State will once again have the best secondary in the Big 12. I have full confidence in Jeremiah Cooper, J-Mo Patton, Tayshaun James, and Jontez Williams, who graded out as one of the best corners in college football last year and is one of the best returners in college football. You want to know how good Jontez Williams was last year? When targeted, Jontez Williams allowed a passer rating of 19. 19. How good is that? If the quarterback were to spike the ball directly into the ground every single play, they would have a 39 passer rating, which is 20 points higher than what Jontez Williams allowed when targeted last year. Mathematically, statistically speaking, it was a better idea to throw the ball directly into the ground every single play than it was to throw at Jontez Williams. That's how good Jontez Williams was. He was better. Jontez Williams was better at defending the pass than the ground. It's hard to quantify exactly that, but offenses would be better off in not completing a single pass the entire game than they would be to attempt to complete passes at Jontez Williams the entire game. That's how good he was. But you need to find a guy across from him. There's a few different guys. Trey Bell, I think, is the one that I think most people believe will be the one to slot in at that spot. The other name there is Quentin Taylor. We'll see. I'm sure they will start out those two guys rotating. But if one or both of those guys turn out to be solid, they don't need to be world beaters. They don't need to be all Big 12. They just need to be solid. They need to be over there and be good enough where if they start throwing at them, they can deal with it and not give them any big plays and really let the safeties be that safety blanket over the top and kind of create that no fly zone where it makes it makes a lot of problems. Fortunately, your safeties are so good that even if they're not perfect, the safeties can cover up for that and they can help out a lot there. But if you can find another guy across from Jontez Williams, that makes this secondary really, really difficult to throw on. It makes and it's going to essentially force teams to lean on the run, even if they're not comfortable doing that. All right, that is the last of the wants. For those are the things that don't need to happen, but you want at least a few of those to go, and if they go, that will make it much easier to do the rest of this. But now we're on to the wishes. What are the things that you don't need them? You don't necessarily need them to be able to achieve your goals, but if you do, if you find these things, it is a um it's not just a cherry on top, but it really takes you kind of a different level, and just adds another element that can help cover up for other things that you don't do as well. Um, the first one here is finding another All Big 12 linebacker besides Caleb Bacon. Assuming that Caleb Bacon comes back and is somewhere in the neighborhood of his 2023 form, where he was a very, very good player, especially as a pass rusher off the edge. Um, I think that is, you can shore up the middle of that defense. If you can find another All Big 12 linebacker there and let Caleb Bacon just let him be a pass rusher, let him be your Von Miller, or whoever you want to put there. Pick a guy, Khalil Mack. If you can let him be that kind of player, and then you have a really solid linebacker group back there that you can count on to do their job while Caleb is rushing the passer, that changes your defense quite a bit. Then you can supplement your pass rush and start getting to the quarterback, start generating negative plays, and make it much easier on the back end of your defense. So that way your secondary isn't having to basically do all of the heavy lifting, especially in the running game too. So find another Big 12 linebacker besides Caleb Bacon, all Big 12 linebacker besides Caleb Bacon, makes this all much easier. The next wish, explosive special teams. So last year, Iowa State special teams units were actually pretty good. Kyle Conradi turned out to be a very good field goal kicker, made some really big kicks. Still looked like a freshman at times. There were some easier ones that he did miss, but he made a lot of big ones. Obviously made the one at Kinnick. You feel good there. You feel good about the punting situation. The thing here what I'm really talking about here is you're replacing two guys that were very good. Jalen Knoll was very, very good, both on kick returns and punt returns last year. Flipped the field in a couple situations there. Like at least once a game, you could count on him. Like on a punt return, picking up 10, 15, 20 yards on a return and really giving the offense a big advantage on the field position coming back down the field. Finding a guy that can be effective back there. Does he need to be as good as Jalen? No. But finding a way to make your special teams be a positive for you, a net positive for you, and using it to flip the field gives you such a big advantage. Obviously, Kirk Ferentz has made hay on that for his entire career at Iowa, on basically using special teams to win him games. I don't need special teams to win me games, but if you can get an explosive special teams, you find a really good returner that can give you, if you can get out to the 30-yard line on kick returns or something like that, or you can get 10 yards on a punt return consistently, whatever it is, and just gain more of that extra hidden yardage back throughout the entire game, that's huge. That makes everybody's job easier. The other part of this is you also have to replace Darian Porter, who is one of the best collegiate special teams players I've ever seen that isn't a returner. Darian Porter blocked a kick of some sort in 4 consecutive years. He was a great corner, and there's a reason he got drafted by the Raiders in the 3rd round. I don't know. I can't prove this because nobody really keeps track of it. If there was a more impactful special teams player in the country last year that wasn't a returner, I don't know who it was. Because Darian Porter blocked and recovered kicks like a few different times last year. Made some big tackles. He was always the guy that like you could have him back there at the goal line to down a punt at the inside the 5 or whatever it is. He was just the guy that made shit happen on special teams. Are you gonna be able to find a Darian Porter on special teams? I don't know. Maybe Benny Nagoye can just slide right in there and do the same thing. I don't know. If you can find a guy that has a propensity for blocking kicks similar to Darian Porter, that changes a lot of things. I mean, I would say genuinely got a lot of points off of and a lot of offensive success off of blocking kicks and things like that and getting and putting opponents in bad field position and things like that through the punting game. Being able to have an explosive special teams unit makes everything better. I know I keep saying that for a lot of these categories. Like if this works, everything gets better. But especially special teams, especially is like that is how you flip the field. That is how you give yourself field position advantages. Being able to do that helps everything. The last wish. I want to see Abu Sama. I want to see him take the next step. If Abu Sama is the player he was last year, running behind a little bit better offensive line, I think that's fine. Carson Hansen was really good. Dylan Lee should be. We'll see what Dylan Lee can do. River Peppers is a guy that I've been touting on here since January when I first previewed him. I would say it's got running backs in the room to keep dishing that rollout, but we've seen how explosive Abu Sama can be at his best. So explosive, in fact, that even though he like kind of struggled last year a little bit, I believe he is still the he's currently the career leader in yards per carry. Over a certain I can't remember what the minimum carry threshold is, like 100 carries or something like that. For rushers over 100 carries, he has the highest yards per carry of any back in Iowa State history, including Breece Hall, Dave Montgomery, Troy Davis, all these guys, Darren Davis. He is explosive. I need him to be less 0 or an 80-yard touchdown. I need him to be 5, 5, 5, 10, 5, 40, 5, 10, 5, 5, 50. Something like I need to see him be a consistent 5 yards per carry guy, and who can also take one the distance. Because Carson Hansen, I mean, we did see him put together some long runs last year, but he's not the same kind of home run hitter that Abu Sama is. Carson Hansen is the guy that you get him the ball and you're like, go get me 5 to 10 yards. Bang, bang, bang. He'll do it all day and night without as much of the explosiveness. Abu Sama is your home run hitter. If Abu Sama can really improve his vision and get better at finding his running lanes, following his blockers, and really being patient too, and also learning when to bounce stuff outside, he can do all of the things Carson Hansen can do and just also have the explosiveness factor involved in his game. If he can do that, I would say its running game jumps up to a whole nother level. And all of a sudden now you're not worried about the offense being centered around Chase Soul and Xavier Townsend and trying to figure out how you replace Jaden Higgins and Jalen Knoll. The answer is you recreate that. We recreate Jason Giambi in the aggregate, and you find a few guys at receiver that work. You find a tight end that's explosive and stays healthy, and you let your running game do the talking the way it used to with Breece Hall and David Montgomery, where that's the guy that's really your bread and butter, and you use the passing game to complement that. You can, if the offensive line can be consistent and Abu Sama can take that next step forward, I would say its running game has a chance to be very, very, very good. But we have to see it from him. So, all right, that is my entire list of all the needs, wants, and wishes for Iowa State this season. As far as just kind of what can propel Iowa State to get back to the Big 12 title game, to win the Big 12 title, and to get to the playoff and just see what happens. Yeah, I'm so excited for this. We're just a few weeks away from kicking off in Ireland against Kansas State. That's going to be a huge game. It's going to be a fun game. And Tyler here with the wise words of wisdom, just win, baby. That's all there is to it. And Iowa State's got the horses to do it. Iowa State has all the personnel they need to win, the Big 12. They do. They absolutely do. Just got to do it. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in. We'll this will be it for this week. Next week, we will be back to our normal Tuesday slot. So Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. We'll be there for the next Tuesday, and then the 16th and the whatever I said, 23rd, right? What did I say? 19th and 26th. The 19th and 26th, I will be in Ireland, but I will try to figure out something there. Maybe just do a short stream from my phone or something like that. We'll figure it out. But yeah, it's exciting. Two more Tuesday streams, and then we're going to be on the Emerald Isle, waiting for Iowa State to play in Farmageddon in Dublin. So, everybody, thank you for watching. Appreciate it. If you can, if you're watching, you're not currently subscribed over on YouTube, I'd really appreciate that if you would do that. Helps this get out to the algorithm and all that. If you have any friends would enjoy this show, send them the link. Send them the link to the channel. Would love to keep growing this community. Appreciate everybody being active in the comments and all that. I really appreciate that. So everybody have a great rest of your week, especially YouTube breakfast. Appreciate that. Everybody have a great rest of your week. We will see you guys all again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Go Cyclones.